The boardroom went silent the moment the promotion slide appeared on the massive screen. Every executive in the room turned toward me because they already believed they knew what was coming. After 9 exhausting years of sacrificing everything for the company, I was finally supposed to become Senior Vice President of Operations. Instead, my heart froze when I saw another name glowing in bold letters across the screen. It was not mine. It belonged to Emily Carter, the 23-year-old daughter of our CEO. She smiled proudly as everyone offered polite applause, even though she had never managed a shipping route, negotiated a customs delay, or solved a supply chain crisis in her life. At that moment I realized something painful. I had never been viewed as a future leader. I had only been the invisible person making everyone else look successful. My name is Natalie Parker, and for nearly a decade I dedicated my life to Carter Maritime Solutions, one of the fastest growing freight companies in the country. When I first joined, we were barely surviving. We operated from a worn-out office with failing computers, outdated systems, and constant financial pressure. I believed in the company because its founder, Richard Carter, convinced me that if I stayed loyal and helped build the business, we would eventually become partners. He promised that hard work would always be rewarded. I trusted every word because I wanted to believe that merit still mattered. Over the years, I became far more than an operations director. I redesigned our shipping network, modernized our scheduling systems, negotiated contracts across several continents, and personally handled every major client emergency regardless of the hour. My phone never stopped ringing. Holidays disappeared, vacations were canceled. Family dinners became conference calls. Whenever something threatened the company, everyone expected me to solve it, and somehow I always did. Richard praised me privately, promising that my promotion was only a matter of time. I never questioned him because I thought loyalty eventually paid off. Unfortunately, my personal life slowly disappeared while I chased that promise. I missed my younger sister's wedding because an overseas shipment became trapped in customs and Richard insisted nobody else could resolve the crisis. I canceled vacations that had been planned for years because another emergency always appeared at the last minute. The greatest regret still weighs heavily on my heart. During the final months of my mother's battle with cancer, I spent countless hours sitting beside her hospital bed with my laptop open, answering international calls instead of simply holding her hand. I convinced myself those sacrifices would secure a better future for my family. Looking back now, I realize I was protecting someone else's dream instead of my own. When the shareholder meeting ended, I followed Richard into his office. He poured himself an expensive drink before looking at me with an expression that almost resembled sympathy. He thanked me for everything I had done, then calmly explained that Emily represented the future of the company. According to him, I was the dependable engine hidden beneath the surface while she would become the public face everyone admired. My responsibility, he explained without a trace of embarrassment, would be training her, correcting her mistakes, and quietly making sure she looked brilliant before investors. Every sentence felt heavier than the last. After everything I had given that company, he expected me to remain invisible forever. Before I could answer, Emily walked into the office carrying several folders without even acknowledging me. She dropped them onto my lap and casually instructed me to process invoices for flowers, decorations, and catering from the celebration event because administrative work suited my skills better than executive leadership. Richard simply smiled as if nothing unusual had happened. He expected me to accept the humiliation without complaint. I looked at both of them for several seconds before offering a calm smile. I quietly agreed that everything would be handled exactly as it should be. Neither of them noticed that my loyalty had ended in that very moment. That evening I returned home feeling strangely peaceful instead of angry. I opened an old filing cabinet and searched for the employment contract I had signed almost 9 years earlier. Every page reminded me of the hopeful young woman who believed hard work guaranteed fairness. I slowly reviewed every paragraph, every condition, and every forgotten clause. I was no longer searching for justice from Richard because I already understood. He would never admit what he had done. Instead, I searched for something far more valuable. I searched for leverage. After nearly an hour of reading, I found it hidden inside the legal language. A forgotten section confirmed that several pieces of software I had personally created remained my intellectual property, because they had never been formally transferred to the company. My heartbeat quickened as I continued reading. Years earlier, Our outdated computer systems could not support the advanced logistics platform I had designed, so I hosted the core processing network on my own secure cloud servers under my personal registration. Richard never questioned it because he trusted me completely. He assumed everything belonged to the company. Legally, it never had. That discovery was only the beginning. 3 of our largest international clients had personally requested that I oversee every aspect of their shipping operations. During contract negotiations, their legal departments insisted on adding key personnel clauses allowing them to terminate their agreements if I ever stopped managing their accounts. Together, those clients generated nearly 3/4 of the company revenue. Richard had completely forgotten those provisions because he never handled the operational details himself. I had spent years protecting his business while quietly becoming the foundation beneath it. The people who believed they could replace me with an inexperienced executive had absolutely no idea what was about to happen. During the following week, I continued going to work exactly as before. I attended meetings, answered emails, and watched Emily confidently make decisions she barely understood. Instead of asking experienced managers for guidance, she filled conference rooms with trendy business phrases while ignoring warnings from the people who actually kept the company running. Everyone could see disaster approaching, but nobody dared challenge the CEO's daughter. The breaking point arrived sooner than I expected. Emily announced a major cost-cutting initiative designed to impress the board of directors. Her first decision was to reroute a critical pharmaceutical shipment through a cheaper shipping port that was already suffering from severe labor strikes and overwhelming congestion. The shipment belonged to our largest client and contained temperature-sensitive medical supplies worth tens of millions of dollars. I immediately opened my laptop, displayed live shipping reports, and calmly explained exactly what would happen if she approved the change. I showed everyone the container backlog, the labor dispute, and the estimated delays. I explained that the refrigeration units would eventually lose power if the shipment remained trapped for too long, destroying valuable medicine and permanently damaging our relationship with one of our biggest customers. The room became uncomfortably quiet because every experienced manager knew I was right. Emily barely glanced at the information before dismissing it with a confident smile. She laughed and told everyone that my thinking belonged to another generation. According to her, modern executives made bold decisions instead of hiding behind data and caution. Richard sat silently at the head of the table, giving his daughter an approving nod instead of correcting her mistake. Then Emily made everything even worse. She publicly removed my system administrator privileges, reduced my access to read-only status, and informed the room that my quarterly performance bonus had been canceled to help pay for her new executive branding team. I did not argue. I simply closed my laptop, thanked everyone for their time, and walked back to my office. As I packed a few personal belongings into a small leather bag, I realized I felt something I had not experienced in years: freedom. I no longer carried the responsibility of protecting people who refused to value my work. Before leaving the building that evening, I made one important phone call. The person who answered was Victoria Hayes, the CEO of Harbor Point Logistics, our biggest competitor. She had tried recruiting me several times over the years, but I had always refused because I believed loyalty mattered. This time my answer was different. We met that evening over dinner, and within hours she offered me a senior executive partnership, a generous ownership stake, complete authority over global operations, and double my current salary. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely respected. The next morning I met with one of the best employment attorneys in the state. After reviewing my employment contract and the paperwork showing my canceled bonus, he smiled confidently. He explained that the company had violated my contract first by withholding earned compensation. That single decision legally destroyed the non-compete agreement Richard believed would keep me trapped. I was completely free to join any competitor immediately. Better yet, every document confirmed that the routing platform I had personally developed remained my intellectual property. That weekend I logged into my private cloud server from home. I did not delete files or damage company systems. I simply ended the free software license I had generously allowed Carter Maritime Solutions to use for years. Then I wrote a short professional resignation email explaining that I was leaving because the company had violated my employment agreement. I sent the message late Sunday night, powered off my company phone, and enjoyed the first peaceful evening I had experienced in nearly a decade. Monday morning began like every other workday for my former coworkers. At exactly 9 o'clock, the software license expired. Instantly, the advanced routing platform stopped functioning because it no longer had authorization to operate. Across offices around the world, shipment dashboards froze, automated scheduling disappeared, and employees were forced back onto outdated manual systems that almost nobody knew how to use anymore. Panic spread through every department within minutes. Only 15 minutes later, Emily's disastrous shipping decision produced exactly the outcome I had predicted. The pharmaceutical containers became trapped inside the congested port with no practical way to move forward. Refrigeration systems failed during the delay, destroying millions of dollars worth of life-saving medicine. Furious executives from our largest client immediately demanded answers. When they learned I no longer worked for Carter Maritime Solutions, they activated the key personnel clause written into their contract and announced they would terminate the partnership. The remaining major clients quickly followed. They had trusted me for years because I always answered their calls, solved impossible problems, and treated their businesses like my own. Without hesitation, they transferred their operations elsewhere. Within a single afternoon, nearly 3/4 of the company revenue disappeared. Investors panicked, managers scrambled for solutions, and the empire Richard believed would stay in his family began collapsing before his eyes. Around lunchtime, my phone rang. Richard was shouting before I even finished answering. He accused me of sabotage, threatened lawsuits, and demanded that I reactivate the software immediately. Sitting beside me in my beautiful new office were Victoria and my attorney. I calmly placed the call on speaker. Instead of arguing, I asked Richard to speak directly with my lawyer. My attorney carefully explained the legal reality. Carter Maritime Solutions had breached my employment agreement first by withholding my earned bonus. My software remained my personal intellectual property, and I had every legal right to end the free license. He also warned Richard that attempting to copy or bypass my software would expose the company to serious intellectual property violations. The silence that followed lasted several long seconds. When Richard finally spoke again, the confidence had vanished from his voice. He apologized repeatedly and offered me everything he had denied only days earlier. He promised the executive position, company ownership, a large signing bonus, and immediate payment of every dollar he owed me. Emily cried in the background, begging me to save the company because the board intended to remove her from leadership. I listened quietly before giving my final answer. I reminded Richard that he once told me engines belonged beneath the hood where nobody could see them. Then I explained something he had forgotten. Without the engine, even the most beautiful vehicle cannot move an inch. I wished them both well, ended the call, and never looked back. 6 months later, Carter Maritime Solutions filed for bankruptcy after losing its biggest customers and facing overwhelming financial losses. Richard sold many of his personal assets trying to keep the company alive, but the damage was impossible to reverse. Emily disappeared from the corporate world almost as quickly as she had entered it, becoming a painful reminder that titles cannot replace experience. Meanwhile, Harbor Point Logistics welcomed every major client who chose to follow me. Together we built an even stronger company where talented employees received proper recognition, fair compensation, and genuine opportunities to grow. Nobody was expected to sacrifice their family, health, or future just to make someone else appear successful. People often ask whether I enjoyed watching my former employer fail. The truth surprises them. My greatest satisfaction never came from their downfall. It came from finally discovering my own value. I stopped begging for appreciation from people who only noticed my work after it disappeared. Walking away taught me something no promotion ever could. Loyalty is meaningful only when it is returned with respect. The moment I believed in my own worth instead of someone else's promises, I stopped living in the shadows and finally became the leader I was always capable of being.